Before we talk about what Susan Rice has just said, let me just begin with, the funding the battle against ISIS. And we know President Obama is asking Congress for this official approval to keep, hitting ISIS. But first, what exactly would Congress need to sign off on? And where do you think the political battle lines will be drawn?
Well, in terms of authorizations, to be honest, the Congress doesn't need to do anything, because President Obama still has the original 2001 authorization for the use of military force that goes back to the immediate aftermath of 9/11. He just doesn't like using that authorization. He thinks it's time to have something more tightly construed, more specific, less open-ended. As you know, he was always a critic of how that particular resolution and the broader political climate around that period of time led to the invasion of Iraq, which he saw as disconnected from 9/11. And therefore, he doesn't want to leave legislation still operative that could allow that to happen again. So he's just not comfortable with the authorizations he already has. But in fact, that's what he's been using to deal with the Iraq and Syria crisis of the last 8 or 9 months. So that part of it doesn't really require congressional action at any given moment in time. It's the authorization for funding. It's the additional money that he'll need, but he's got money for this year. So it's really just for next year's debate, based on the budget request that was offered to Congress this very week. That's going to be the essential requirement, but he has 9 months for Congress to work on that.
Okay. So with the funding then specifically, and let's look ahead to this potential fight over dollars and cents here. How do you think that line will be drawn, and will he then continue on the airstrikes as he waits for that sort of approval?
Yeah, I think that's not going to be an issue, frankly, because the whole country is rallied around this particular operation, because obviously ISIS is so horrendous and the money is not huge. The risks to Americans are not huge. The pressure is probably going to be in the direction of whether he's doing enough and whether he should be doing even more. And in any event, he's got several $billion that he can use to wage operations from now through September 30th, which, as you know, is when fiscal year 2015 ends, and when in theory he would need new monies for October 1st and beyond. But again, that's 8 months away, so he's got plenty of time for that budget debate.
Let's talk about Susan Rice. She just spoke there at Brookings. She talked, we've pulled some sound from her talking about the current media and political climate. Here she was.
We cannot afford to be buffeted by alarmism and a nearly instantaneous news cycle. We must continue to do the hard work of leading in a complex and rapidly evolving world, of seizing opportunities and of winning the future for our children. Strong and sustained American leadership remains as essential as ever.
Michael, I guess my question out of that is more on strategy. We've heard so many different top brass in the administration saying the goal is to dismantle, destroy ISIS. But have they made the strategy clear?
Well, I think that, first of all, Dr. Rice did a good job on explaining the strategy for most parts of the world. But I think when you apply it to Syria, it's not particularly compelling to most people that we do have a plausible path to success. For Iraq, I think we do. It may or may not work, but it's plausible. And you know how you might have to adjust it along the way if it doesn't show promise. We've got a government to work with. The government has an army we're helping rebuild. At some point, they'll be ready to go attack ISIS in the northwestern part of Iraq. In Syria, by contrast, there really is no credible force that we're working with that's got any chance of taking on either ISIS or President Assad. I don't think Dr. Rice really broke new ground on that particular issue today. And clearly it's going to be one that Ash Carter, the defense nominee, and others continue to get grilled about on Capitol Hill, and where we continue to have a big, vigorous debate. There may not even be a good, plausible Syria strategy within reach right now, but I do think we're going to have to do more as a nation to deal with ISIS, because the current help for the opposition in Syria, the so-called moderate opposition, is way too little and way too late to make much of a difference, I'm afraid.
Michael O'Hanlon, thank you.
My pleasure.